Well, welcome back. It's been a little bit since I've had an update here on the WD45 diesel. I've been working on a 190 project and finally got it completed, so I can get some time now to fall back in on this diesel. But I want to show you what we're getting ready to do. All right, so here it is. Last video, I guess it was. I was looking at the clutch back there. We'd already did some engine work to it. So tonight, I'm going to pull these rims off and tires and the front end here and get this thing blocked up, start tearing into the backside, probably maybe get the hitch parts and stuff off and get this thing ready so I can put some new seals in on the PTO housing and investigate that, see where it's leaking, get ready to put new brakes on it. We got the good old pins down here that I got to get out, which will be probably quite interesting. Like everybody else, when you go to work on one of these old tractors, those pins are just nearly impossible to get out of there. So we'll work on them. Hopefully we can get them out and we'll be able to get the brake housings opened up, swept up, because I know they're full of stuff from mice and what have you in there. So anyway, so that's the 45 diesel. We'll have time lapse running, and I'll break in here occasionally and kind of give an update on what's going on. So the engine obviously is not out yet, so I don't know what condition my crank's in. So I'm gonna have to get that thing out as well. That way I can get to the machine shop, gotta get it decked. We'll go ahead and put ARP studs in it, get those existing studs that's in it out, put the ARPs in, and injection pumps gotta be pulled off and taken to a shop. I'll rebuild the Rusa Master ones on the 301 series, but never been in one of these pumps, so I'm going to take that to a shop and let them go through it. From my understanding, there's a lot of parts in there that are obsolete, so I don't want to take any chances on messing something up, not having been in one before. So we'll let the professionals take care of that, and then we should be ready to put this thing back together. We'll put new paint, new tires all the way around it, and I got the correct front end. You can tell this has a bracket that's been welded up, so I got the correct wishbone bracket that goes in place there. So we'll be getting that replaced as well. All right, so we're going to start stripping down some of the other connections here, and then start working on that front end and get it out of the way. Brought a crate over where I'm putting all my parts, so when I go to the sandblaster I can just load that on the trailer with a skid loader. Not much oil left in the PTO housing. So working around on the side, just getting the bolts and everything loose on the frame rail. And I was looking at the steering pin so that I can get it driven out. Took off this bracket so the front end will come loose. Move my cherry picker around here so that we can take that side frame rail off. Wasn't sure how heavy it was, so I want to get that in place so I didn't drop it. Put a couple of chains around it. Take the rest of my bolts out on the front end, and I'll pry it off. I'll just take chains off and we'll move it over out of the way. Clean up the mess, and we'll put the jack stand up underneath the backside of the bell housing. Then we're going to start taking off the front end. Pull both my tires off. Drop the front end up out of the way. Got a helper there, my little dog. So I went ahead and got the tie rods disconnected and just drove them down from the top side. And we drop the front end out of the way. And we'll get repositioned here where we can see the universal joint on the steering rod. Got the pin driven out of that. Get the old front end out of the way. And now we're ready to take the front end block loose. I got my chains hooked up on that. Popped out the rest of my bolts, and we'll move it over here and set it down on the tire. Alright, so my next step is pulling the crank pulley off. I want to go ahead and get it off of there and probably the front cover before I pull the engine out. It's just secured real well, and it just makes it easier to work when it's up like this. Even though I have an engine stand, this is more secure. So we're gonna get working on that. I think what I'm gonna do, I was gonna put a puller on it, but I don't really have a good way to do it. So I'm gonna stick in behind, inside the cavity there, I'm just gonna put a pin right in that hole, and then I'll put my bolt in like this, and then I'll screw it in, and it should push it off of there. So I'm gonna give that a shot first and see how it works, and then we'll go from there. Alright, so I put those pins in, and that popped the pulley right off of there. So I put the main crank nut back on, and I'm looking at the cross member front mount, I guess you could call it, for the engine. So I got that off, and just prepping the rest of the stuff for the front cover so that we can get that thing in place, or get it ready to pull off. Here's a side view, so I'm working on that injection pump. I think there's 3 bolts around the back side of that thing that you have to loosen up, and then it'll just work itself right off of there. Not too bad of a job. So I'll get that little bit of linkage that's left pulled off and get it taken off and over to the bench. Alright, so I pulled the injection pump out. I think there's a couple bolts that bolt into that front cover that I'm wanting to get off, so just went ahead and pulled it. And I got a fair amount of rust in there. May need to replace that drive gear. But this whole thing's going to be disassembled and rebuilt anyway, so got it pretty much ready to go to the shop. So looking back over here at the engine, moving along pretty decent. We'll go ahead and pull that front cover off. The timing gear is what mates up with the gear on the injection pump, and it's rusted too. Had a bunch of water in this thing. So in fact, that timing gear is actually chipped, and it's going to have to be replaced. It's not any good. It's pretty bad shape. So we may have the same thing down on the crank. So we'll figure all that out here in just a few minutes once we get the front cover pulled off of it, and we'll see what we've got going on. Alright, so you saw the timing cover come off, and the cam gear is completely shot, and there's where we were looking at earlier. All that stuff is just broke off on the gear, so have to get a new cam gear for sure. Hopefully the cam itself's okay. We'll figure that out at a later date once the rest of this is done. And then on the low side there, must have been some oil. That's the only thing I can figure, because the crank gear is fine. So the rest of the engine obviously is not. So we're gonna probably at this stage, I'll go ahead and pull it loose from the back. We'll get my engine hoist set up here and go ahead and take it off. And we'll flip it over, pull the oil pan, and then I can get into the crank and see what all we have going on the bottom side. So please hit like and subscribe, and leave a comment below, and make sure you turn on your notification bell so that each time a new video is posted, you'll be notified.